Okay, from my perspective, these powers are looking at this pandemic like a commercial break in the television. What I mean, uh, from their perspective, as far as I understand, it's a limited interval time, and since also the figures of the pandemic are in a decrease, so they are looking at it's like a break, and therefore, from my perspective, nowadays, if everything is frozen, in the very near future, all of the classical rivalries will be resumed. And but I also would like to mention here that even if that we are seeing that the most of these rivalries are frozen right now, the Turkish Republic is taking an advantage and seizing this opportunity that most of the multinational companies are refraining from conducting any examinations, any research in the area. They are sending their seismic ships and drilling ships together with their warships. And basically, it's a sort of a demonstration of power, and they are violating the exclusive economic zones of Republic of Cyprus. And they are, when we are looking at the bigger picture, they are also very much present in Syria, in Idlib region. Nowadays, we have a ceasefire, but this is very fragile. It can be resumed anytime. We happen to see that that particular ceasefire, the ceasefires that have been reached before, they were violated by the two sides, and we happen to see the resume of the escalation and violence in Syria. Also in Libya, the picture is a little changing. We happen to see the recent successes of the Sarraj government against Haftar's forces, and we all know that the Turkish armed forces deployment of the Bayraktar UAVs changed a lot in this theater as well. We do remember that the Bayraktar UAVs, the Turkey's national UAVs, they basically proved themselves in last February and in the beginning of the March against the Bashar al-Assad's forces when the Russians closed the Syrian air territories to the Turkish F-16s. We happen to see that the Turks challenged the Russian air defenses and the Bashar al-Assad's forces with their UAVs. So Turkey is also using these weaponry in order to support the Sarraj government. And of course, this is paving the way for a larger friction. Just days ago, we happened to see the joint declaration of Greece, Republic of Cyprus, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Haftar, that Turkey is considered as an aggressor state, also in Libya and also in the Eastern Mediterranean. In this larger picture, when we are seeing that the friction between Russia and Turkey is growing, so United States may also take the side of Turkey, especially in Syria, but we cannot speak about a concrete U.S. support to Turkey because the U.S. interests and the Turkish interests are not going directly proportional in the Eastern Mediterranean when we are speaking about the natural gas issues. So shortly, when we are looking at this whole big picture, the pandemic for many actors is acting sort of a break. But from Turkey's point of view, they are seizing this opportunity and they are trying to demonstrate power that even the pandemic did not stop Turkey's desire to find this natural gas and to demonstrate its power in the Eastern Mediterranean. As far as the effects of the pandemic on regional cooperation, for instance, from my perspective, tourism will be affected very negatively. But anyhow, Greek government, Republic of Cyprus, and Israel, as far as I know, we already signed a new agreement to support each other's tourism. But the countries which rely on tourism, I mean, on their economies, will be very much badly affected on that. In terms of security, from my perspective, I really don't think that the militaries, if the pandemic will not penetrate into the military bases, from my perspective, they will continue to join military drills. We already know that the Israeli Defense Forces already conducted these kind of drills in Cyprus, since the Cypriot topography is very much similar to the mountainous topography of Lebanon. And that's from Israeli perspective, it is very much important. And also from the Israeli perspective, the Greek air territory is can be used in order to make some military maneuvers and for the military training of the war pilots. And from this perspective, I really don't think that it will affect security base. But since the regional cooperation that it is touching to people level, I think it will be badly affected, not because of the people themselves or because of the decision makers, but because of this pandemic. We'll see that from my perspective, the world will become less globalized place during in the coming 2 years. From my understanding, I think we will back we can go back to our track in 2022 or 23. Fighting against terror. Okay. Religious fundamentalism and fighting against terror. You know, from an Israeli perspective, I can tell you that this pandemic brought a relative peace to our border with Hamas in Gaza Strip. From time to time, they are launching a rocket or two in order to say, please don't forget us, we are here, and your headache will be resumed after this pandemic will be over. The Israeli government is doing its best so that this pandemic will not get into the Gaza Strip. And as far as I understand, we are doing our best in order to slow down the growth of this pandemic also in West Bank. And the Israeli doctors are cooperating with the Palestinian doctors. So this pandemic basically reminded, from my perspective, the people of the region that first of all, we are human beings, and then we are Jews, Muslims, and Christians. And as a result, we also should see some good results of this pandemic. That during this 2 months, we happen to see less security-based frictions and exchange of fires. And it's also the same for Idlib. It's also the same for any sort of terrorist attacks that we happen to see in urban population centers. We did not see like planting a bomb in a population center that could cost the lives of you know many people. So this pandemic basically, we should also see the good side of it. And from my perspective, when this pandemic will be in a decrease, I assume that the classical clashes between Hamas, maybe Hezbollah, and other actors in the region may continue. By the way, From the Israeli perspective, what is going on in Syria and the Iranian penetration is in Syria is very important. And during this during the Corona days, we happen to see that the Israeli air forces continued to conduct airstrikes against the military threats that were perceived on the other side of the border. So maybe let me correct myself. If we happen to see a relative calm in the Israeli Gaza and Israeli West Bank border, we did not see such a calm in the Syrian border. So it depends the priorities of the sides. From the Israeli perspective, since the Iranian penetration into Syria is unacceptable, and Israel will not let any new Iranian formations in the other side of the Syrian border, as they already managed to do that in Lebanon. So Corona did not play here a role in this frontier, but in other frontiers, yes, we can speak about a relatively calm environment.